gallbladder problems, gingivitis, a bad back, indigestion, fatigue, low libido, not sleeping.
At little or no cost.
One who gets are certified sideways is free.
New NN app on your Android or iPhone. And never miss a Talk 1470 minute.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Quartz, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so happy you could be here with us this week. We have another great show for you today. And if you're a caregiver, this show is for you. We talk about Alzheimer's and other related dementias. We talk about Alzheimer's problems, issues, challenges, all the things that caregivers go through. As a caregiver, you know that it's not easy. And whether you're new as a caregiver or you've been doing it a long time, it is very difficult. And anything that you can get to help you is really, really good. This show will provide you with tips, information, and resources from experts in their field, and they will give you this information from their expertise, and it is such a wonderful experience to be able to realize that, gee, I'm not the only one. This isn't just me going through this. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, that walk in your shoes and have walked in your shoes, but fortunately, people are willing to help and to share. And I think by knowing that and by getting resources, you're going to know that you can learn from others and find your best path, because there's no one right answer. It's not black and white. Everyone is in a different situation, different position, but it is still dealing with memory loss and caregiving, and I am so glad that you are with us today. One of the things that we do on this show is that we offer a free book, compliments of our national sponsor, Arden Quartz Memory Care Community. So usually I give that name and phone number for you to call in or to call the toll-free number to get the book, probably midway through the show, but I'm going to change things up a little bit, and because this is so important and it's so great. And if you are a caregiver or you know someone who's caregiving and they don't have this book, it's called the 36-Hour Day Book. This is a wonderful resource. It is a book written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. It's in its 5th edition, which means it's been around a while and it's constantly being updated because information on dementia and Alzheimer's and research constantly changes. But this book is really good to have in your home to refer to. Anytime that you come across an issue and you want to look something up, it doesn't have to be read from cover to cover. This is a wonderful resource, and all compliments of Arden Quartz Memory Care Communities. Arden Quartz has many communities throughout the United States, around 50, and maybe one located near you. The way to find out where they're located and to also get a free copy of this book is to call the toll-free number, which is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Give them a call. Tell them that you heard about this free offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info Show. They will get your name and address and make sure that they mail a copy straight to you. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going on with the show. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Quartz is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Quartz. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Quartz, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides.
Hi. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Quartz. The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able? Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's
Info Show. My name is Marcia Teele, and I am your host for the last 3 years, and we are live from Boca Raton, Florida. So if you're a caregiver, you know that it is hard, and there are a lot of things that we just don't understand, but yet we have to deal with what's in front of us. So I have a couple questions for you. How would you feel if you could take control of your life with one decision and change your whole life? How do you think that would make you feel? Well, you can do it. There are so many ways to change our mindset, to create a better path, no matter who we are, whether we're a caregiver or not. Our next guest has some wonderful information to share. His name is David Teele, and he's an author of 2 books. One of his books is called The Law of the Garbage Truck. Yes, you heard me right. The Law of the Garbage Truck. How to stop people from dumping on you. And David is joining us via telephone, and we're going to talk about what this means and how he can share the law of the garbage truck and apply it to our lives. So, David, are you with us?
I sure am, and I'm so glad to be on the show, and I just want to congratulate you, Marcia, on the 3 years. It's a big deal, and you're making a big difference for a lot of people.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much. I know we have a phone coming and going between us, so if you can talk loud so our guests can hear everything you have to say, because we don't want to miss a word of it.
Oh, you bet. I'll speak up as loudly as I can.
Great.
And, thank you for that.
So first of all, you have authored a couple books, and you also do speaking engagements to help people in this particular field. So first of all, my question is, what is the law of the garbage truck? In just a couple sentences, how would you tell somebody what this book is about?
You know, the easiest way for me to describe it is that we all run into negativity from other people all the time. And we run into, whether it be in our own family or work or in our community, and we're oftentimes burdened by that negativity. Or in the caregiver world, just all the people we interact with, there are interactions that are difficult and at times very negative. And so the law of the garbage truck is a methodology, a process, a mindset, a strategy for navigating the negativity we encounter in our lives. And the intention really is to determine what are those negative things that we can't control, that are really just hassles and we shouldn't put our energy into, and what are the important things we should focus on. So if we let the hassles pass us by and not get hooked by them, then we can focus on the most important things. And in the caregiving world, that's our loved ones.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure you don't mind if I let everyone know that you've been a caregiver in your family, caring for your father. So you,
Absolutely.
Your mother, your family, your wife, you have children, all have a part in caregiving for your dad that had dementia, right?
That's absolutely right, yes.
So these principles that you outline in your book, not only are they good for everyone, but they can be especially applicable for caregivers, couldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that people ask me all the time is, well, I benefited so much by reading your book. The Law of the Garbage Truck made a difference. But do you use your own stuff? I mean, does it come in handy? And when I became a caregiver, and when my father began suffering from Alzheimer's, and we had so many different things that we had to do over that course of time, that I found that the Law of the Garbage Truck in so many ways was a savior to me, and also was very helpful to my mom, who was just unbelievably, just incredible during this period, and the same for my family. And again, it's just there are negative things that happen in the process of taking care of our loved ones, whether it be doctor interactions or nurse interactions or hospice interactions, or just getting to the place on time or late, or even with our people we love, the way they respond to us, that once we are able to, or for me, I'll just speak personally, once I was able to continually recognize what are those negative things that I can really let pass by, and show some forgiveness to some other people really quickly, and just stay focused on the important things, that gave me much greater energy for taking care of my dad, and helped the people who took care of my father feel even better and more energized when they were in our presence.
Yes, that's awesome. But your book was written, obviously, before you really needed to use the principles with your father, which was so great that it helped your whole family. But going back, what was your mission, or what was your purpose initially to write the book?
Well, my mission that I simply stated is I want to increase happiness, success, and achievement in the world for everybody. And the Law of the Garbage Truck has reached people from more than 100 countries. So when I say, for everybody, I really do mean it. I believe that when we are happier, we are more giving, and the research demonstrates that. We are more considerate of other people. We do better work. And when we are achieving in our lives, and not necessarily big things, but just making a difference with our natural strengths, and when we are civil with each other and we are kind to each other, just life is better, and the world makes everything for all of us is better, and our families and our careers and so forth. So my mission was to give the world essentially a process that allows people to navigate successfully this negativity. And I was blessed with an experience 20 years ago in New York City, where I was in a taxi cab and I saw a taxi driver behave just beautifully in response to a really bad driver. And I'm always looking for stories. I've been doing that for years. As you said, I was a keynote speaker for years now. I'm an executive coach. I still write. And I'm always looking for stories, and that turned out to be a story that I wrote about my experience in New York, that I eventually named The Law of the Garbage Truck. And that story became something that people could relate to quickly, and then say, you know something? I don't have to take the burden of everyone else's negativity. I can really be my best self, and I can also be careful not to burden other people with my negativity as well. So I'm really just trying to help people live a happier, more civil, and ultimately a more successful life.
Well, that's a big, lofty, ambitious goal, and I know that you have already helped a lot of people. I've actually read the book. I think it's a really good book. It's an easy read, and your principles are, they make sense. But just because it's easy to read and the principles make sense, it's not necessarily easy to apply. Therefore, teaching someone how to apply the principles, that's what's going to get them from point A to where you want them to be, right?
Yeah, you hit on it perfectly. And what I say to people is just start simple. Start with driving, because most of us have to do it, and in South Florida in particular we have to do it. But most places around the world, we have to get into a car and drive much of the time. And so if you just practice, when you get on the road, focusing on what are the negative things you can't control and that you can let pass by, and what are the things that you need to address. And so what ends up happening is I'll say, well, you're driving. What happens when someone cuts you off? Are you going to yell at them? Or are you going to follow them? Or let's say you have your children in the car, or you're on a date with your spouse. Are you going to start talking about these people and start saying they're, what a jerk, I can't believe it, and then get into a rant that South Florida drivers are terrible, or wherever you live, you insert city. And are you going to do that, or be frustrated and then let it change your mood? So what I say is, look at when you get on the road and say, someone cuts me off driving, be safe. If you have to hit the horn just to make sure they don't do anything dangerous, hurt someone, do that. Get out of their way, and then practice the law of the garbage truck. Let that action that you can't control pass by, or as I say in the book, offer real-time forgiveness and say, I'm sure they didn't mean to do that. I myself have cut people off, so I'm going to show some forgiveness and go ahead and let these people off the hook. And then when you're getting off the highway, go ahead and let somebody in and see what impact that has. And I have to just tell you this briefly, Marcia. My 15-year-old daughter is learning how to drive.
Oh, boy. And
the other day she was in a situation where she needed to get from a parking lot onto a busy street. And in fact, it was Jog Road in South Florida here. And she was waiting, and she just couldn't get out. She just couldn't get comfortable to get out on the road. And people were starting to stack up behind her, and she felt the pressure, and no one was letting her in out of this parking lot. And finally, someone did, and they really put their emergencies on and gave my daughter space to get on. And my daughter was so grateful. She told that story, but also said she was so grateful she almost cried. That's how much she appreciated that gesture of that other person.
Yeah, because
start
right
with the stuff that happens every day.
Right, because
one of them.
Negativity, I think, is contagious, and by sharing negativity, it makes other people be negative or feel bad, and if we can turn it around to be more positive and change, it can change actually the whole situation. Like you said, positive thinking and positive actions can just change the whole world around for the better. It's easier said than done sometimes, but that's where the practice comes in.
Yeah, you hit it right on the nose, and that is another example, Marcia, is around what do we see when people say, how you doing, or how was last night, or what's going on this morning. We can choose as you say, really the direction of a conversation by the way we answer it. And so often we're not really thoughtful about the way we respond. So the first thing we say is, oh my gosh, traffic was terrible this morning. Or, oh my gosh, I was so tired when I woke up this morning. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe what happened on the television last night. And we launch into a negative conversation that's really not serving anyone. And it's not to say you can't have those conversations, but just be aware of the fact that you're inviting people into that conversation to start the day or start the meeting. And there are times where when we recognize, wait a second, I'm actually baiting somebody into a conversation that neither of us really want to have. We really want to get to taking care of our loved ones or getting to work and being good with our customers and clients and so forth. So you're absolutely right. Just another place is just to think about how do you respond to people when they say, "How you doing?" or "How's your loved one?" and be honest and authentic, and at the same time be thoughtful about, do I need to bring in excess negativity or excess complaining or excess criticism?
But what, David? But what if a person's a caregiver and they're caring for someone with Alzheimer's, and someone says, "How are you doing today? How's your loved one?" Are they supposed to just kind of suck it in and say, "Oh, everything's fine," and not say anything negative, or or on the other hand, they don't really want to dump all the negativity on a person because, they feel that nobody really wants to hear it? Is there a happy medium?
Yeah, you asked a great question, and the answer is you don't want to be inauthentic, and you don't want to push all this stuff down. If you walk around pretending everything is great all the time, you're going to suffer, and it's going to be hard for you to care for the people you love. So that on one end of the spectrum is just a terrible idea. You can't push it down. On the other hand, you want to not be the one who is everything that is everything. I mean, there are certain days where it is just terrible news, terrible situation, and it's understandable for us to respond to a diagnosis that day, or someone takes a turn for the worse, or they pass. That's all about whatever emotion one needs to feel, and some of those are just going to be sadness and grief and so forth. And anger can be a part of it too. But on a day-to-day basis, when you mentioned visiting my father or my mom went every day. And if every time someone said, "How are you doing?" she only shared everything bad that was happening, at some point people just get tired of hearing the same dose of negative reports versus sharing some real stuff that's negative, which is part of our lives, and especially caregiving, and also sharing some of the positive things that have happened. So in caregiving is to say, something happened. Yeah, there was an outburst today, and it was tough for me. It's, real hard, and that's a natural, normal conversation. And then also potentially to say, and we had a great call from a sibling or a friend called in, or the nurses today were just so sweet with Dad and made such a difference and made him smile. That's the idea, is at least to share, as you were saying before, Marcia, so well, is that let's share some gratitude, let's share some appreciation in addition to being real and sharing any difficult moments that are authentically something we want to let people know about.
Yeah, so it's almost like good news, bad news, or bad news, good news, whichever way you want to look at it, because you can share what's going on and you can share how you're feeling, but at the same time find something positive to say, because that gives everyone hope, and it'll uplift people to have that good news, and they can still empathize with you, but yet too they know where you're coming from, but you're ending it and you're still being positive even though you have negative things to say, is in a way. Perfectly stated, and it's really just the way you said it would be, we could frame that and just say, acknowledge, share with the people that are interested in what's going on with your loved one, and share how you're doing. And if there's some tough stuff in there you want to share, absolutely okay. And recognize also it's a great opportunity to put emphasis on some positive things that you want more of. And I guess I just have to share one thing, that if you want nurses and doctors and other care people in the caregiving world to really care for your loved one, boy, why not emphasize the positive things you see as often as you can? When good things are done, let them know how much you appreciate them, even in your difficult days, because people are human and we want to be recognized. There's research on that all of us want to be recognized at some level, and when we acknowledge each other,
it brings out even more of what we need and know is important for our loved ones. And so we can still entrust in other people the difficult news, the bad news, the negative stuff, but boy, we get a lot out of making the world a better place when we share what we're appreciative of as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it's difficult to give the care over to others, in a community, in an assisted living and memory care. So looking for the positive and accentuating the positive, it's going to make probably the negative things happen less and not so frequently, because you're empowering them to do better.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then what's interesting is that human nature is you want everyone to my trip through the hospitals, I'd run into some nurses who would say, boy, your mom is so lovely, and your dad is such a great guy, even, with Alzheimer's. It's a pleasure to take care of you. And I've also heard hallway conversations where they'll say, boy, some families are hard to deal with, and I just don't want to go back in there because they're yelling. And, there are instances where you do need to really advocate for your family member, and it might involve raising your voice. But day in and day out, normally, it doesn't require that type of interaction with the good people who are caring for our families. Right,
right. Now, you mentioned before about caregiving, and things may not go perfect, or things may not be done the way you would think they would be. In chapter 22 of your book, which, again, for anyone that's just tuning in, The Law of the Garbage Truck, How to Stop People from Dumping on You. In chapter 22, you talk about perfection, and you say perfection is not the goal. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's a great place to start, and that is, the idea is that in all of this, in my field of research is called positive psychology. It's not to be perfect at being positive on all the right times and authentically negative in the right times, but it's to try our best to improve our own lives and the lives of others, and that's by making an attempt to do it, to go after it. Beverly Sills said something of, it's best to try. I'm paraphrasing, and she was a great opera singer out of New York. For those who love music, that you might fail when you try, but you're doomed if you don't try. And so the idea is, with the law of the garbage truck, is and in life is try to be a better person. Try to communicate more effectively. Try to dump less, what I call garbage, less criticism, complaining, and so try to do that. But when you do, don't be unduly hard on yourself. Just be aware of the fact that maybe you were excessively negative with your family or your loved one or at who you're taking care of, and focus more on incremental, just being better but not perfect. And if we did that with most anything, we'd achieve a lot more rather than getting caught up with it's got to be perfect in order for me to do it.
Right, because a lot of caregivers, they try really hard, and sometimes they do beat themselves up because they didn't do it right, or they weren't perfect at what they were attempting to do, and then they get guilty about it. And does the garbage truck, the law of the garbage truck, how do you deal with guilt?
Oh, it's so much fun to talk to you. You're asking all the questions that I wish people would ask more, and then you're encouraging people to read the book. I appreciate that too, because I think it can really change people's lives. I got so excited. Thank you.
The big G word, guilt is pretty heavy in caregiving arenas.
Yes. So here's the thing about this is why I got so excited, because it was so important, is that the story of the law of the garbage truck ultimately leads to a metaphor, and the metaphor is that human beings can be like garbage trucks, and they can be garbage trucks. And I'll tie it to the guilt in just 1 second. I'll just frame it this way, that negativity comes from other people, and when we get focused on bringing in too much of other people's gossip, rumors, criticism, complaining, we're acting like a garbage truck because we're collecting this stuff. We're also a garbage truck when we allow ourselves to get wrapped up and sunk emotionally and mood-wise when we feel guilty and stay in a guilty frame of mind, or when we feel resentful or regretful, and we allow ourselves to stay in that space, then we alone, without anybody else's interaction, we alone are creating a real negative space for ourselves. So that's when I refer to as we're dumping on ourselves. So what I often find helpful, I read about this in the book early on about my mom helping her father with, and he had dementia as well, not Alzheimer's, but he did have a dementia, and helping my mom recognize that what she was doing, that there was so much that she was doing for her father that was getting crowded out by her guilt that some of the things her father was saying and not really realizing what he was saying. And so what I try to do with people in my coaching and workshops and in conversations like we're having now is, what's the evidence for what it is that's bothering you? You know, if you feel a little guilty about something that you didn't do, or let's take it in the full perspective of the love you were offering, the support you were giving, the intentions that you had, or the things that you were also dealing with in other parts of your life. Because life doesn't stop for us to caregive. We still have to keep going with it. And so I'll say, really look at full perspective, take into account everything you're doing, and what's the evidence for you really being down on yourself, and what's the evidence for, you know, like in a court of law, what's the case for you having done quite a lot and made a difference? And when you look at all the positives you did and a few mistakes here and there in the context of your life, you usually come up with, you know, I did my best. I wasn't perfect, but I did my best. I made a difference. And guilty may come and go. I might have those feelings, but I'm surely not going to live in guilt, because I know from the evidence that I just shared or wrote down or talked with a loved one about that I'm okay. I'm okay.
Well, those were great words, because caregivers, you know, they do have a lot of guilt, and you know, these are emotions that are completely normal, but what you're saying is there's better ways to deal with it, and that's hopeful.
Yeah, it's, you know, my mom, and you talked about her briefly earlier, I think is an angel. I really think she's an angel on earth. And she was a number of times. My dad passed on October 28th, and I think about him all the time, and I have him all over my office, and I talk to him, and you know, and Mom couldn't have. I don't think she could have been any. If perfection was possible, I think Mom was pretty close, and even she has had moments where she'll start to ruminate about what she could have done that day, or what she could have said, or how she could have held him differently, and then I just say it's natural to feel those things. Don't press them down. Don't get down on yourself. Don't feel bad for feeling them. But then once you're ready, and sometimes I call it the Grandma Bonnie rule. This is on my wife's side of the family. She's 90 years old, and when she feels bad, she has this sort of, I call it rule, but she just calls it's just a practice for her. She'll say, I may feel bad for 10 minutes, but then I say, okay, that's enough. Now I need to get moving again. And that's the same thing I want to say to everyone. If you feel bad, it's okay. It's just there is a certain period of time, maybe it's 10 minutes, Grandma Bonnie, maybe it's a part of a day or more, but where you then say, you know what, I need to move beyond this feeling of guilt or resentment or anger or whatever that emotion is, and really be fair to yourself that you surely have done a lot.
Yep, that's great advice. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to hear more from David Pauly and the law of the garbage truck and what else that means and how it can help. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Quartz. The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Quartz. Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers.
On CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And we are back, and my guest today is David Pauly. He is an author, he is a speaker, and an executive coach, and he is joining us via phone today talking about his book, The Law of the Garbage Truck, How to Stop People from Dumping on You. It's really applicable to everyone, but caregivers certainly can glean a lot of great advice from this. So, David, thank you again for being with us today.
Marcia, thanks for having me. I'm having a great time.
Well, good. I always enjoy speaking with you.
Likewise.
I have a couple questions because I read your book, and a lot of this is so applicable to our everyday life. You know, it's basically, in a nutshell, how to keep people from dumping on you not dumping on others, and more importantly, not dumping on yourself. And when you say dumping, you mean creating the negativity and criticism and all of that goes in with it. And certainly all of those conditions and emotions, you know, we all face at some time or another. But one of the things when we're talking about caregivers, one of the things that caregivers tend to do is be a martyr and try to do everything themselves because they don't like to impose maybe on other people. Maybe they feel that other people can't do things for their loved one as much as or as well as they could do for them. And that goes back to that perfectionistic thing that we were talking about.
Right.
But they're afraid to ask. So one of the topics that you discuss in your book is how to ask for help without dumping on somebody. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I tell a story about that. What I say to people in my experience with my father's Alzheimer's or some of the other difficult moments of my life is, don't go it alone. Don't try to do everything yourself. Don't do that for a couple of reasons. One is you are going to time out at some point. You're going to be overwhelmed at some point, physically or emotionally. And you always do better if you have a support network. Your loved ones, your friends, people who are at a caregiving facility that your loved one is at. You're always going to do better when you have people in that regard helping you. And then when you ask for the help, what I say is try to be aware of what you're feeling or the emotions you're carrying that day, so that when you ask for somebody's assistance, you're not going in as a garbage truck with all this negative feeling from some other experience. So let's say you had a bad day, bad time driving coming in, or some frustration with your family, or work's not going that great, and you're not feeling that great when you and if you're not aware of that feeling, when you go ask for some help, you step into the hallway and you ask for a nurse to come in, or the doctor's in the hallway and you want to consult with them. If you don't check first what energy you're carrying, you can come and ultimately ask for help with the garbage, and that can set people back and set people to make them feel a little uncomfortable. So the idea is to think, how can you ask for help, and in a way where you're coming from a positive place and as positive as you can be in whatever situation you're in, so that the person who feels the request feels the good energy of the request, which is essentially, I could really use your help. And this is a point I'd love to make, and that is, so many people want to help. They really want to make a difference in other people's lives, and they just want to be asked. And so the times when we think, well, I don't want to burden someone, like you said, Marcia, people often feel, well, when they ask for help, they often give people a chance to make a difference. And surprisingly, we often make the world a better place when we do ask for help. And don't take it for granted and be very appreciative of it, but nonetheless ask for that assistance.
Yeah, that's great, because even sometimes the smallest gesture can really make the most difference.
Yes, yeah, exactly. In every situation, it's so true.
So
has a ripple effect. That's what has a ripple effect.
It does. In your book, in Chapter 6, it's interesting because you say how to let garbage trucks in your memory pass by. And so, a lot of caregivers, have a lot of regrets, or like you said, maybe wish they'd done something different, or maybe something in the past still haunts them, and they remember these things. How do they get past that? How do they get past the garbage in their memory?
Yeah, it's another, terrific question. That what happens to many of us is we wake up in the morning and something triggers us, and all of a sudden we're thinking about something really bad, about the way we might have done something or didn't do something. And sometimes it's not like something that just happened. It's something that happened years ago. And some mental process or physical process triggered a thought, and then we all of a sudden are feeling an emotion, whether it be in the morning or we're driving or we hear music and it triggers us, and the same thing when we get into the facility where people are taking care of our families, and something triggers us again, and then we feel full of that negativity, and so we.
But how do they let it go? Is it possible to let it go?
Yes, and that's the key right there. Is that if there's something you're dealing with from your past that you haven't addressed, and you haven't talked to someone, a therapist or a clinician or a coach or a loved one, and you haven't dealt with it, then deal with it. Then, as hard as it is, we got to address it and get to it, and that's important in our lives. But so much of the time, we've already adjudicated the way we handled something. We've already judged that. We've already given ourselves permission to say, we did the best we could at that time. So if you get triggered and that thought comes back up with, oh, that same situation happened 4 years ago, I could have done it differently, and then you say to yourself, that's a garbage truck. I've already dealt with that. I've already handled that. I already know I was a decent person in that situation. I'm going to look at it as a garbage, just as like I might a negative person who is not kind to me on the driving. I'm just going to look at that, smile, as we say in the actual the part of the story is smile, wave, wish that garbage truck well, and let it pass by. So it's basically saying, smile and wave at acknowledge the feeling of regret or resentment or whatever you're concerned about, and then let it pass by. Let the energy just pass by, and don't take it back in and start to rethink it knowing that you've already dealt with it.
Right. A lot of people do that. They say, well, I really messed up yesterday. I should have done this, or I could have done better, and I really messed up. And they beat themselves up. But what you're saying is, you have to learn to let that go because you did your best at the time. And a lot of what happens is out of our control, which we talked about at the top of the show about, being able to distinguish between what's in your control and what's not in your control. But I think caregivers especially do this, and they need to give themselves some slack,
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the hardest things in the research, hardest things on anyone is being a caregiver. It is a tough. I mean, it's beautiful and it's loving and it's kind and it's all those good things, but it's tough when someone that you love is sick or is not themselves, and you're experiencing them in a way that you've never experienced them before, and sometimes with emotions from them that you would never thought would happen. It's tough, and you have to ultimately be kind to yourself, because it really takes its toll, and it really does take its. The research demonstrates that if caregivers don't take care of themselves, have the support network, get help, and be understanding of their own fallibility, and that if they don't do that, they are going to suffer.
Yes, absolutely. We talk about that all the time with caregiving, and take care of yourself so you can take better care of your loved one. And again, easier said than done. So we've been talking about the law of the garbage truck, and this book that David Paulet has written is very good because it's easy to understand, but it highlights things that are specific that people can do to help their everyday lives. And in a way, it's a little bit of a workbook because, David, you have places in the book where people can write in, fill in the blanks, that helps them to identify some of the issues that they may be dealing with. And I think that's very helpful to them, which is really great because we can read, as till the day is long, but if we don't try to apply it, that's the key, to try to apply it every day to our lives to make that difference.
Yeah, well, thank you for mentioning that and appreciating the fact that I really did write it with the intention of the chapters are short, they're research-based, so it's not my opinion on things, it's research-based, but they're told through story. And there's usually a short prescription for something you can do that will make your life better. And then, as you say, just a space enough. And right now, the best thing to do is get a paperback of the book. There are hard copies around, but paperback where you just write your answers to the questions that I pose. And again, there's no perfect way to do the book. Some do read the chapter, write their answer, and do every one. Some will say, I'm going to write my answer to this question. I'm going to pass on this chapter. And I just met a gentleman who's in the real estate business who just said, I just read The Law of the Garbage. It changed my life. He said, I couldn't put it down, so I just kept reading it, and I didn't write anything. But he said, now I'm going back, and I'm writing after every chapter in the space you provide.
Yeah, so it's really whichever way it benefits you the best. Well, we've been talking about the garbage truck, and there's a pledge, and I'm going to read it. It's called the No Garbage Truck Pledge that David has written in his book, and I'm going to go ahead and, with your permission, David, and share that with everyone, okay?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so the pledge. I do not accept garbage in my life. When I see garbage trucks, I do not take them personally. I just smile, I wave, I wish them well, and I move on. And I do not spread garbage to others. I am not a garbage truck. I do not accept garbage in my life.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I need to insert how you just said that into the audiobook that I recorded, and take me out for that piece and put you in. That sounded great.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's the pledge, and if we all try to do better. Basically, I think your book is very encouraging for people to read and to encourage them to be better on a daily basis, with everything, with their personal lives, in their caregiving. We're, just, normal human beings. And your goal of making everyone aware that they can be better is just so wonderful. And we have just a few minutes left. And one of the questions that I want to ask you is something else that you address in your book, because we have caregivers that have all these daily challenges, and eventually the person that they are caring for with dementia passes away. And now that person is lost and they're sad. And the topic in your book that you address is find happiness again after dealing with illness, loss, and personal tragedy. Tell us about that.
So many ways to address that, and I had a flood of emotion as you were saying that because of losing my own father, and it's tough. But the key is that we can stay stuck in a feeling of despair and depression and resentment, or we can find a way to move on and focus on very positive things as we move forward, or productive and helpful things that move us forward. And I'll share something that's not in the book, but that my mom and I are doing on a daily basis, and that is we talk about the challenges of missing Dad, and how that can be really hard at times. Mom lives alone, loves where she lives, but misses him. And so there are a lot of things that we talk about that are pretty heavy in nature. But one of the things that we're doing is we are sending each other a quotation every day. And I'll send one that I think might resonate with Mom, and that she can, that will get her to think of something that will be interesting or make her laugh or make her think. And she does the same thing with me. And so we've chosen an activity every day that brings us together, focused on something other than the sadness or the sorrow, and gives us something else to build upon on a daily basis. And that's just one example of many of continuing on after the loss of a loved one.
I really like that, because a lot of caregivers are lost. They now are left without that day-to-day to-do list, and the pressure of always having to go and be and do and take care of things. And when their loved one passes, it's time for something else to fill that void, and things that can be positive in their life. I like that exercise that you and your mom do with sending each other daily quotes to encourage, uplift, and at the same time, it's honoring your father, because you both are, honoring him by doing this together in his memory.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Marcia. I'll share one other thing, and maybe more because I'm a writer that I've chosen to do this, but it's been a neat project for Mom and for me. And that is, I'm writing a little history about Dad, and his birthday is on April 9th, and so this coming week, I believe it's a Monday, so listeners out there, check that date. But I'm going to post a link to a short history on my father, and right now it's about 4 pages, and Mom and I have been working on it together and thinking back about what Dad was proud of and the impact he had on us, and across his life, 87 years, and it's another project that's not, there are times, of course, that triggers some sadness, but mostly it's pride of what a wonderful man he was and how lucky we were to have him in our lives. And so it's something that's constructive for Mom and I to work together on, and at the end of the day, we'll have this legacy document for all the family in the future and that come after us.
That's a beautiful thing. That is such a beautiful thing to do. So before we have to go, David, how can people get a copy of your book, The Law of the Garbage Truck? Is it in stores, Amazon? Can you tell us how to do that?
Yeah, sure. It's really available where books are sold. So you can go into your local bookstore if they don't have it on the shelf for some reason, or they're sold out. You can just ask them to order it. Or if you choose to do it online, Barnes & Noble online is of course is a location, as well as Amazon, and just look up The Law of the Garbage Truck, and I just suggest get the paperback. I think it's selling now around $12. It's probably the best $12 that you'll ever invest when you really take the Law of the Garbage Truck and bring it into your life. But yeah, that's where you can buy the book. And if you want to get connected to me, there are two ways, and that's thelawofthegarbagetruck.com. There's a way to get into a newsletter and some resources that I'm going to be making more available. And then there's also my executive coaching work that I also address things that are helpful to people on a day-to-day basis, caregivers alike, as well. And that's Paulay, my last name, Pollay, coaching.com. And there's a newsletter there as well.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Everybody take advantage of this. It's a great book. Everyone should read it. David, I want to thank you again for joining us and talking about the Law of the Garbage Truck and how it can help not only caregivers but everyone. And I just have to mention you have another book that you've written about the 3 promises. So I'm hoping that in the near future we can have you back on the show and talk about that one as well.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been the greatest, fastest hour I've had recently, and maybe I can get into the studio. I'd love to.
That would be great. Get you in here face to face. That would be wonderful. Well, I want to thank you, and thank you, the audience, for joining us today. It's been a great fast hour, as David said. Don't forget, call Arden Quartz to get your free book of the 36-hour day. 1-888-478-2410 and get your book. In the meantime, we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you. Take care and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.